March 1945. The banks of the Oder River, the last line of defense before Berlin. Major Heinrich Müller watches his batteries through the icy fog. 88 millimeters, 105 millimeters, 150 millimeters. Steel tubes that once made the world tremble. He commanded artillery on 3 fronts. He saw his guns shred French tanks, pulverize Soviet bunkers, halt entire offensives with surgical precision. For 6 years, he believed he mastered the science of war, that his calculations, his ballistic tables, his Prussian discipline were invincible. Now he gazes at the horizon and sees only smoke. His guns fire at targets that have already moved. His coordinates arrive too late. His observers are dead or isolated. The sound that should have been controlled thunder has become a desperate echo. In the sky, Allied planes hunt his positions with radar. From the east, Katyusha rockets cover kilometers in seconds. His ammunition runs out. His supply routes have vanished. And for the first time in his career, Müller understands a brutal truth. The cannon, by itself, is no longer enough. This is the story of how German artillery, the pride of centuries, the symbol of Germanic technical superiority, realized its own mortality. Of how 600 years of gunpowder dominance ended not in glory, but in silence. Of how men who believed they controlled the fire discovered that the fire already had a new master. Of how the gunpowder era reached its limit in the hands of those who believed in it most. From triumph to ruin, from certainty to doubt, from invincibility to oblivion. The thunder is dying, and no one was prepared to hear its final sigh. September 1939, the Polish border. The morning sun illuminates endless columns of German artillery advancing across the plain. 105 millimeter batteries pulled by horses, LEFH-18 howitzers, heavy mortars. The gunners sing as they march. They believe what they were taught. Artillery is the queen of battles. He who masters the fire masters the field. German doctrine is perfect. Each battery supports a specific maneuver unit. Forward observers advance with the infantry, calculating coordinates, adjusting fire in real time. Surgical precision, mathematical death. In 48 hours, German artillery demonstrates overwhelming superiority. Its guns destroy Polish fortifications with frightening ease. The 88 millimeter cannons, originally anti-aircraft, reveal an unexpected talent. They pierce tank armor like paper. The Wehrmacht discovers a miracle weapon by accident. The Poles fight with bravery, but their positions crumble under barrages calculated with Prussian precision. Müller, then a young lieutenant, commands his first battery in combat. He watches his shots destroy bunker after bunker. He feels intoxicating pride. This is pure power, controlled by the human mind. The Polish campaign ends in 5 weeks. German artillery suffers minimal losses. It proves that the doctrine works, that years of training were worth it, that the combination of mobility, precision, and coordination is unbeatable. In post-campaign reports, generals praise the efficiency. Krupp receives massive orders. German doctrine manuals are obsessively studied by foreign observers. The system works. The mathematics of death has been perfected. And that summer of 1940, as Nazi flags flutter over Paris, German artillery reaches its zenith. Pride is absolute. Confidence unshakable. The illusion of invincibility complete. No one imagines that in 5 years, all this will be ashes and bitter memory. The thunder roars victorious, but greater storms approach on the horizon.
June 1941, the Soviet border. Operation Barbarossa. 3 million men, 3,000 tanks, 7,000 artillery pieces cross the border in a summer dawn. It is the largest military operation in history, and German artillery is at its heart. Mueller, now a major, commands an entire battalion, 12 batteries under his command, 72 guns thundering across the Ukrainian plains. The first days are absolute triumph. Soviet defenses, caught by surprise, crumble. German batteries advance 50, 60 kilometers a day. They destroy entire Soviet columns. The firepower is overwhelming. But something is different. Russia is not France. The distances are immense. The roads, when they exist, are poor. Horse-drawn guns fall behind. Ammunition begins to run short. Mueller sees for the first time a limitation he never considered: logistics. His guns need constant supply. Each 105mm cannon consumes hundreds of rounds a day. Supply trains stretch for hundreds of kilometers. Partisan attacks interrupt lines. Destroyed bridges delay convoys. Still, German artillery dominates. In Kyiv, in Smolensk, in Vyazma, its barrages destroy Soviet encirclements. Hundreds of thousands of prisoners. Immense territory conquered. Mueller and his men believe Moscow will fall before winter. The machine works. The doctrine prevails. But in command meetings, unsettling whispers begin. Soviet losses are immense, but they keep fighting. They keep bringing new guns. They keep resisting. For the first time, veteran officers furrow their brows looking at maps. The distances are too great, the enemy too numerous, and winter approaches. The thunder still roars, but for the first time, there is doubt in the gunners' eyes. Small, silent, but present. Winter of 1941, outskirts of Moscow. The temperature drops to 30 degrees below zero. The steel of the guns freezes. The hydraulic recoil stops working. Shells must be heated before firing. Horses die by the thousands. Trucks won't start. Mueller watches his batteries bog down in the snow, unable to displace. Mobility, the heart of German doctrine, has vanished. His guns have become static fortifications, exactly what they always criticized the French for. And then comes the Soviet counterattack. December 1941. Fresh Siberian divisions, equipped for winter, fall upon German lines, and they bring artillery. A lot of artillery. Guns the Germans have never seen. Katyushas. Multiple rocket launchers mounted on trucks. Mueller hears the sound for the first time. It is not the whistle of shells. It is a collective roar, as if the sky is tearing open. 16 rockets per launcher, entire battalions firing simultaneously. Hundreds of rockets covering hectares in seconds. The difference is shocking. A German 105mm cannon fires 4 rounds per minute. It requires 8 men. A Katyusha fires 16 rockets in 10 seconds. It requires 2 operators. Then it vanishes before counter-battery. Mueller tries to respond with conventional fire. His guns locate the position, calculate coordinates, prepare a salvo. When they fire, the Katyusha is already kilometers away. It is impossible to counter something that doesn't stay put. For the first time, German gunners feel fear. Not of the projectiles, but of the mathematics. The ratio is wrong. They spend minutes on each calculated shot. The enemy saturates an entire area in seconds. Volume has beaten precision. Speed has beaten calculation. Mueller writes in his diary that night, "We have encountered something we didn't expect, something our doctrines do not predict, and we don't know how to beat it." The thunder hesitates for the first time. 1943, Kursk salient. The last great German offensive in the east. Mueller watches the greatest concentration of artillery he has ever seen. Thousands of German guns pointed at Soviet lines. The artillery preparation begins before dawn. The ground shakes. The sky darkens with smoke. For hours, shells fall on Soviet positions. Mueller believes nothing can survive that. His calculations indicate complete saturation. When the panzers advance, he expects to find ruins. But the Soviets are alive. They withdrew during the barrage to alternate positions. The Germans bombarded empty trenches.
And when the panzers enter the kill zone, Soviet artillery responds, not with precision, with volume. Thousands of Katyushas, thousands of heavy shells, a curtain of fire that doesn't dodge, doesn't move, just falls like a rain of metal. Entire panzer divisions halt, not from destruction, but from saturation. Impossible to advance through that. Mueller commands desperate counter-battery. He locates Soviet batteries, directs fire, achieves some successes, but for every Soviet battery destroyed, 3 new ones appear. The Soviets have learned mass production. They don't care about losses. They replace guns and crews continuously. German artillery, technically superior, is simply buried by numbers. For the first time in 5 years, Mueller thinks of surrendering. Not out of cowardice, out of mathematics. His guns don't have enough ammunition for the difference. No mobility to escape. No air cover. Continuing to fire is just spending lives without purpose. But orders say, resist until the last shell. He obeys because he is a soldier, but he obeys without believing. When he finally escapes the encirclement, he brings 17 men from a battalion that had 200, 4 guns out of 48, no transport, no ammunition, no communication, walking through France like refugees. Mueller looks at his emaciated men, empty eyes, and sees a mirror of all German artillery, technically competent, tactically experienced, strategically irrelevant. At a regrouping depot, he receives new guns, old cannons manufactured in the First War, defective ammunition, 16-year-old recruits as crews. A young lieutenant asks, "Major, can we still win?" Mueller looks at the boy and lies. Of course. But in his private diary, he writes the truth. German artillery died at Falaise. What remains are ghosts firing at shadows. It's over. We know it's over, but we continue because we don't know how to do anything else. The thunder has become a whisper, and no one hears us anymore. The illusion of invincibility is dead. Only duty and despair remain. September 1944, Germany. Mueller is called to a special meeting. SS officers present a new weapon, V2, ballistic rocket. No need for a cannon, no need for a gunner, just coordinates and a button. It flies faster than sound, range of 300 kilometers, impossible to intercept. Mueller watches a filmed demonstration. The rocket rises vertically, disappears, falls on a distant target. Massive explosion. Questionable accuracy, but undeniable power. The SS officer proclaims enthusiastically, "This is the future of artillery. Cannons are the past." Mueller and other artillery officers listen in silence. They feel insult and truth simultaneously. The V2 represents everything traditional artillery is not. Fast, mobile, impossible to counter, but also everything it lacks. Soul, precision, adaptability. The V2 is launched and forgotten. It falls where it falls. It cannot adjust fire. It cannot support infantry. It cannot respond to targets of opportunity. A veteran colonel asks, "How many V2s can we produce per month?" Answer, "Perhaps 100. Costing how much each?" Evasive answer. The colonel laughs bitterly. "I produce 1,000 conventional rounds for the cost of 1 V2, and I hit specific targets." The SS officer replies coldly, "Your shells never reach London. Our rockets do." Awkward silence. Mueller understands the cruel paradox. The V2 is strategically superior, but tactically inferior. It serves terror, not war. It kills civilians, not armies. It is a weapon of desperation, not victory. But it also represents an inescapable truth. The era of cannons is ending. Perhaps not today, perhaps not in this war, but inevitably. The future belongs to rockets, missiles, planes, things that fly free of tubes and rails. Classical artillery is obsolete. It just doesn't know it yet. Mueller leaves the meeting feeling like a living fossil, master of a dying art. The thunder replaced by a supersonic whistle that no one hears until it's too late. December 1944, Ardennes, the last German offensive in the West. Mueller participates with renewed hope. Massive artillery concentration, 1,000 guns, intense barrage preparation. Perhaps, he thinks, we can prove we still matter. The first days are encouraging. Rapid advance, tactical surprise, artillery supporting panzers like in the old days. Mueller feels nostalgia for 1940, when everything worked, when they were invincible. But it lasts 3 days. Then the sky clears.
Allied planes appear by the thousands, and the nightmare begins again. German batteries systematically destroyed, supply columns obliterated. Müller receives the order, support the offensive against Bastogne. His guns fire for hours, but the Americans respond with their own artillery, and a shocking discovery. The Americans have a superior fire control system. Any American observer can call fire from any battery in range. Instant concentration. Müller needs command approval for every mission. The process takes minutes, minutes that cost lives. The Ardennes offensive fails, not for lack of courage, for systemic insufficiency. The Germans fight a 1939 war. The Allies fight a 1944 war. A 5-year difference, a technological and doctrinal abyss. Müller loses another half of his guns. He withdraws with survivors through snow and constant bombing.
In a frozen bunker, he talks with a young captain. The man asks directly, "Major, why do we continue?" Müller has no honest answer. Because they are orders. Because giving up is treason. Because they don't know how to do anything else. But the truth he doesn't speak, because admitting defeat is admitting they wasted lives on an obsolete doctrine. It is too heavy to bear, so they fire. Even knowing it changes nothing, the thunder has become an empty ritual. Sound without fury, roar without meaning. January 1945, east bank of the Rhine. Müller receives his last guns, captured French cannons from 1940. Cruel irony. Using weapons from the defeated enemy to fight a lost battle. Incompatible ammunition, manuals in French, improvised crews. A 15-year-old boy asks how the hydraulic recoil works. Müller teaches patiently, knowing the boy will probably die before mastering the technique. The Allies cross the Rhine in March. Müller receives his last order: destroy bridges. His guns fire. Some bridges are damaged, but American engineers repair them in hours, or build new ones. Müller realizes the futility. He is fighting an army that replaces bridges faster than he can destroy them. He is fighting unlimited industrial power with exhausted resources. That night, he writes a letter to his wife that he will never send. He describes the feeling of commanding ghost artillery. Guns without proper ammunition, men without proper training, coordinates without observers to confirm them. Firing in the dark, literally and metaphorically. He says German artillery died months ago, that they are just zombies performing purposeless movements, that the greatest tragedy is not defeat, but discovering that everything they believed was an illusion. Müller remembers a conversation with a retired general years ago. The First War veteran said, "Artillery wins wars." Müller believed it for 15 years. He trained, studied, commanded based on that faith. Now he sees the truth. Artillery wins only when other factors are balanced. When the enemy dominates sky, sea, industry, resources, no firing precision compensates, no bravery overcomes mathematics. He picks up the doctrine manuals he studied at the academy. He reads sections on fire superiority, perfect coordination, tactical mobility, all correct in theory, all useless in practice when the enemy has 10 times more guns, 100 times more ammunition, 1,000 times more air support. The thunder taught humility, a brutal and final lesson. March 1945, Oder River. The last barrier before Berlin. Müller commands what remains of his battalion. 6 functional guns, 40 men, ammunition for 2 days of combat. Through binoculars, he sees the Soviet preparation. Thousands of guns, Katyusha trucks lined up like locusts, tanks covering the horizon. He counts mentally, gives up when it passes 1,000. The mathematics is clear. They have everything. We have nothing. A staff officer arrives with orders, halt the Soviet advance. Müller almost laughs. With 6 cannons? Against 1,000? The officer avoids eye contact. Orders are orders, he mutters. Müller thinks of refusing, of declaring impossibility, but he signs the order receipt, because that's what he has done for 20 years. He obeys. The Soviet artillery preparation begins at dawn. The sound is different from anything Müller has ever heard. It is not a barrage. It is apocalypse. Red sky from rockets, earth trembling continuously. The barrage lasts 2 hours without stopping. Müller and his men bury themselves in an improvised bunker. The guns are exposed. 3 are destroyed before firing the first shot. When the barrage stops, Müller emerges. The landscape transformed. overlapping craters, trees vaporized. 2 of his 3 remaining guns damaged, 1 crew completely dead. He gathers the survivors, 12 men, 1 functional gun. The 15-year-old boy is among the survivors. He cries silently. Mueller places a hand on his shoulder. No words. There are no words.
They fire the last gun at advancing Soviet tanks. They score 1 hit. A tank stops smoking. The other 90 continue. Mueller gives the order, abandon the gun. No sufficient ammunition, no sufficient crew, no hope. They withdraw on foot, leaving the cannon behind. Mueller looks back once. He sees his last gun silent against the flaming horizon, and he understands the painful symbolism. The gunpowder era ends like this, not in glory, in abandonment. The thunder falls silent, forgotten in the field. April 1945, outskirts of Berlin. Mueller and 11 survivors reach the capital, the city besieged, streets barricaded, children in uniforms carrying Panzerfausts, desperate madness. Mueller receives orders, assume command of a Volkssturm battery, civilian volunteers, 60-year-old men, first war guns. No radios, no observers, no modern ammunition. He teaches retirees and teenagers how to operate 1918 cannons, antiquated mechanics, technology from another era. A 70-year-old man asks, "Major, will this work?" Mueller lies automatically, of course, but everyone knows the truth. They are playing soldiers with museum weapons against the modern army. The Soviets enter Berlin. German artillery tries to resist. Mueller directs fire from a gun positioned at a street corner. They fire at tanks 500 meters away. A distance manuals call suicidal for artillery, but there is no choice. They manage to destroy 1 tank, another. Soviet counterfire pulverizes the position. Mueller survives because he was 50 meters back. 8 of his men die instantly. He gathers 3 survivors. 1 is the 15-year-old boy, another, the 70-year-old man, the third, a veteran corporal with 1 arm. This is his battery now. 4 men, no gun, no ammunition, no purpose. Mueller looks at the tattered uniforms, soot-covered faces, empty eyes. He sees the reflection of all German artillery, reduced to nothing. Defeated not on a glorious battlefield, but in streets, corners, ruins. Death by 1,000 cuts. That night in a flooded basement, Mueller speaks for the first time. It's over. No one responds. Everyone knows. They always knew. The boy asks, "Were we good gunners, Major?" Mueller answers honestly, "The best." But it wasn't enough. It was never about being good. It was about being right. And we were wrong. The thunder died in silence, drowned in volume and progress, as it should have. April 30th, 1945, Mueller finds an abandoned artillery piece in a park, 88 millimeter, partially destroyed, but still functional. Some scattered shells. He and the 3 survivors position it. No orders, no coordinates, no tactical purpose.
Just because it's what they do. They are gunners, and gunners fire. They load the gun manually. They aim in the general direction of Soviet tanks. No observer, no functional rangefinder. Mueller estimates distance visually, as was done 100 years ago, before science, before doctrine, just eye and experience. He orders fire. The cannon recoils. The shell flies. Something explodes in the distance. Impossible to know what. They load a second shell. Fire again. Third. Fourth. They expend the found ammunition. 10 shots. Then silence. It's over. Mueller looks at the smoking barrel. His last gun. His last shots. No witnesses. No records. No strategic meaning. Just gunners doing what they know until they can't anymore. The 15-year-old boy asks, "Was that our last shot of the war, Major?" Mueller replies, "Probably the last shot of the gunpowder era."
Confusion on the boy's face. Mueller explains, for 600 years, cannons decided wars. Today, that is over. What we fired here changed nothing. It will never change anything again. War now belongs to rockets, planes, atomic bombs, things that fly without tubes, fire that is born without gunpowder. We are the last, and we didn't even realize when we became obsolete. They abandon the gun. They walk through burning Berlin. Mueller looks back one last time. He sees the solitary cannon against the red sky. Perfect symbol. German artillery ended not with a bang, but with a whimper. Not with glory, but with oblivion. The thunder fell silent, and no one besides them noticed, because it no longer mattered. The world moved on without them, as it always would.
May 1945. Surrender. Mueller and the survivors are captured by the Soviets. The interrogator asks, "What was your function?" "Artillery," Mueller replies. The Soviet laughs. "German artillery? The famous Prussian precision?" Mueller does not respond. The humiliation is complete. He spent 20 years believing in technical superiority, 5 years commanding in combat, and he ends as a joke in interrogation. In a prisoner of war camp, he meets other gunners, men from different units, fronts, ranks. All share the same look. Defeat, understood too late. A veteran colonel sums it up. "We fought a 1914 war with a 1914 mentality. The world changed. We didn't. We paid the price." Mueller spends sleepless nights thinking. Where did they go wrong? The doctrine was correct. Training, excellent. Equipment, superior initially. But they lost anyway. Why? The answer comes slowly, painfully. Because they believed tactical excellence overcomes strategic inferiority. Because they focused on winning battles, not the war. Because they perfected the art of firing, but ignored the science of sustaining. Another prisoner, a Krupp engineer, explains the numbers. Germany produced 40,000 artillery pieces in the war. The Soviets, 500,000. The Americans, 100,000. The numbers are clear. German quality could never compensate for Allied quantity. The mathematics was against them from the start, but no one admitted it. They preferred to believe in myths of racial superiority, Germanic genius, technical invincibility, and they paid with blood for arrogance. Mueller writes his last entry in a tattered diary. German artillery was not defeated, it was surpassed. The world discovered that volume plus mobility plus resources overcome precision plus doctrine plus training. It discovered that modern war belongs to industry, not craftsmanship. The gunpowder era ended, not because gunpowder failed, but because it ceased to be relevant. The thunder was replaced by numbers, production, mass. And we, proud gunners, were the last to realize. Our greatest defeat was intellectual, not military. 1946, prisoner of war camp in Siberia. Mueller works in a coal mine. At night, German prisoners talk about the war. They try to understand how they lost. The gunners specifically try to comprehend how the weapon they mastered was neutralized. The discussions are honest, painful, enlightening. A young captain argues, "We had better guns." Mueller replies, "Irrelevant when the enemy has 10 times as many." A lieutenant insists, "Our doctrine was superior." Mueller counters, "Useless when the enemy controls the sky and cuts supplies."
A major questions, but our precision, Mueller interrupts, it doesn't matter when the enemy saturates the entire area with volume. The conversations reveal a pattern. Every German argument about technical superiority is nullified by Allied strategic reality. Better guns? Yes, but no fuel to move them. Better training? Yes, but no recruits to replace losses. Better doctrine? Yes, but no flexibility to adapt when the situation changed. The fundamental error Mueller realizes was confusing tactics with strategy. German artillery won 1,000 small battles, but it lost the war because small victories do not accumulate into great victory when the enemy has unlimited resources. It was a lesson the First War should have taught, but pride prevented learning. Mueller thinks of future generations. What lessons will they learn? He hopes it is humility. That technology without resources is useless. That quality without quantity is insufficient. That doctrine without adaptability is a trap. That artillery, no matter how precise, does not win war alone. It never did. It never will.
Most importantly, that the gunpowder era has ended. The future belongs to guided weapons, missiles, rockets, planes, things that classical gunners scorned as imprecise, but that won by changing the rules of the game. Mueller finally understands they were defeated not for failing to play well, but for playing the wrong game. The thunder taught the final lesson. Even kings fall when the era ends. 1953. Mueller returns to Germany. The country divided, rebuilt, different. He visits a military museum. He finds an 88mm cannon on display. The plaque describes symbol of German artillery in World War II, legendary precision, feared by enemies. Mueller touches the cold metal. He remembers when he believed those words, when precision seemed sufficient, when legend seemed reality. A visiting boy asks, "Sir, did you fight in the war?" Mueller nods. The boy points to the cannon. "Was this good?" Mueller considers the answer. Finally says, "It was excellent, but it wasn't enough." Confusion on the boy's face. Mueller explains, war is not just about good weapons. It's about having the right weapons at the right time in the right quantity. We had good weapons. The enemies had the right ones. He looks at the entire exhibit. Artillery pieces from various eras, Napoleonic cannons, First War pieces, 88mm, and in the corner, almost hidden, a V2 model. The progression is clear. Each era brought new technology that made the previous one obsolete. The musket replaced the bow. The cannon replaced the catapult. The rocket is replacing the cannon. Inevitable, unstoppable, natural. Mueller leaves the museum thinking of his dead comrades, men who believed, fought, died for artillery. Were they brave? Yes. Competent? Yes. Right? No. And that is the tragedy. They did not die for cowardice or incompetence. They died for serving an outdated cause, for defending an obsolete doctrine, for believing in invincibility that never existed. The lesson of German artillery is not about failure. It is about limits. Every technology has a limit. Every system has a limit. Every era has a limit. When the limit is reached, excellence does not save. It only delays the inevitable. The gunpowder era reached its limit in 1945. German artillery was the last to accept it and paid the highest price. The thunder fell silent, but the echo remains, whispering a warning. Pride precedes the fall, always, inevitably, painfully. And the new era arrives, ready or not.